Which tool decides what you do today? Your calendar or your to-do list? Now, most knowledge workers tend to protect their meeting time on their calendars if that was non-negotiable, and in many respects it is. But between those meetings, they move to their to-do list and they see an endless list of things that they could perhaps do, which requires them to make decisions and negotiate with themselves. And this is what's causing most people's overwhelm. Now, the great thing about your calendar is it puts in a natural constraint, and that is the 24 hours that we have each day. And that's there, plain as you can see it on the screen or on a piece of, in a planning book or whatever you're using, you can see the constraints instantly into how much time you have available today. Now, let's take, for example, if I had 6 hours of meetings today and I worked a typical 8-hour day, that would tell me that apart from 2 hours, I'm going to spend most of the day in meetings. So if I then open up my to-do list and I see 150 tasks scheduled for today, well, something's wrong, because there's no way I'm going to be able to do 150 tasks. And now what I have to do is waste a lot of mental energy curating, negotiating with myself to decide what I will and will not be able to do that day. And the chances are, with 6 hours of meetings, you probably need time to make a coffee, go to the bathroom, have your lunch. You actually probably only have about 30 minutes to deal with your to-dos. And that's not taking into account the communications that you're going to get today, because we'll get them every single day, whether it's through Teams or Slack or email. It's just going to mean that those 150 tasks in your task list scheduled for today are not going to happen. Now, a few years ago, I read Walter Isaacson's biography of Leonardo da Vinci. Now, Leonardo da Vinci had a wonderful set of to-do lists, most of which he never actually did because he just lived his life almost in a bohemian way. However, he still made lists of things to do, many of which was go to Milan and map out the river or something, talk to a professor in Rome. There were many tasks in there that he never dated, but they were just things that he had this, oh, I need to do this, I want to do this, whatever, and he would write it down on a list. But his day-to-day schedule, well, with Leonardo da Vinci, he really probably didn't do, and he just woke up in the morning and did whatever he felt like. But the day-to-day schedule really was something that he would stick to. These to-do lists were just things that he didn't want to forget, and he had an idea that he wanted to do with them. Now, I'm not suggesting that we do a more of a bohemian way that Leonardo da Vinci did, but it is a good example of how your schedule is the master plan for the day, and your to-do list or task manager is just the stuff that's been collected that you can then decide what you will do. But that, again, involves quite a lot of negotiating and decision making, and it's just blah. So there are a few things that you can do that will really help you to put the calendar back as the primary productivity tool of your life. Now, on your calendar, your meetings are going to be there first because they're usually pre-arranged and you've got meetings on your calendar, I'm guessing, right through to next week, perhaps into next month. And you may even have some regular recurring meetings that are just going to be on your calendar throughout the whole year. That's great because that's the start of your structure. Now, I am talking about work here more than your personal life, but if you were doing a college degree at night school, then of course they would be on, those lecture times would be on your calendar. Similarly, you'd probably have your vacation time and any family events. That's fantastic because that gives you the structure that we all need in our lives, whether we think we need it or not. That structure gives you purpose, and that's one of the great things about using our digital calendars correctly. Now, the next thing I would suggest, though, is looking at your calendar on a day-to-day basis and seeing where you have space for doing all the tasks in your to-do list. Now, one tip I'm going to give you here is to find a way, whatever task manager you're using, to categorize your different types of work. Now, I use Todoist, and in Todoist we have labels. Now, labels can be anything, but I use it to categorize my work between writing, projects, things like this, audio visual, my admin, my communications, my chores, things like that are all going to be as a label. And then I can group those together quite simply using Todoist filters. Now, I'm not suggesting that everyone now goes and uses Todoist. Todoist is just one example. You can do this in Things 3, you can do this in Microsoft To Do, you can even do this in Apple Reminders. You can add tags, and those tags will be categorized, will be the categories of your work. So when you look at your calendar, you're not trying to figure out, oh, I need time to write to this email, I need to respond to this email, I need to do this. You don't have to do it this way. All you would need to do, for example, responding to an email, is to put in some communication time. Oh, I'm going to need a little extra time for communications today, so I'm going to block out 2 hours this afternoon between these 2 meetings, for example. You can do something like that. Or this project is due for completion next Friday. That only gives me about 5 or 6 days to finish this project. I need to find some extra time in my calendar to work on these projects or this project. Now, the key to this though is to treat those time blocks that you're setting aside for doing this work as a meeting with yourself, because this is where you're going to have that quiet, focused time, something that Cal Newport writes in Focused Work. And it's really important that if something is genuinely critical and needs to be done, then time needs to be protected for you to do it. But you also need to treat that as if it was a meeting where you're not going to be able to get out of it. So this then brings us on to another kind of dilemma. Be strategic about when you do the deeper, more focused work. Now, what I mean by that is, if you find that the afternoons is where you get a lot of brain fog, you just feel a little bit tired and lethargic, that is not the best time to be trying to do focused work. I've got a task at the moment that's going to take me about 2 or 3 hours, which essentially means I have to go through a spreadsheet, line by line by line. It's a painful, slow, laborious task. The worst time of day for me to do that would be immediately after lunch. I would not be able to stay focused, and it's going to take me forever. So for a task like that, I would do maybe 30 minutes or an hour each morning when I am at my best, when I am more focused, and get through as many as I can do. Now, just to give you an example, I've actually done this. I did this as an experiment the other day. On Monday, I did it for 45 minutes in the morning, and I got through the list of about 45 items. The next day, I did it after my lunch, and I only got through 30. Now, if that means, and I was really struggling to get through 30 as well, I could see immediately that it's not that there's anything wrong with me between Monday and Tuesday. It's just the time of day I was trying to do it. That was what was causing the problem. So the afternoons for me is a much better time for me to do the more active tasks that I have to do or attend meetings, because my brain just doesn't focus very well in the afternoons. So I'll do a lot more of the physical type of tasks that I need to do in the afternoons, but in the morning I like to be able to sit down at the desk and do more deeper focused work. Now, you're not necessarily going to be able to do that every day, because you may have meetings in the morning, although if you are in a position where you can dictate when you have your meetings, I would suggest that you push them to the times when you are more low energy. I'm not really a big fan of doing things by energy, but you can know your own biorhythms, and you probably know when you're at your best and most focused. Pick the right times. Deeper focus work when you're at your most focused and alert. The more less stuff that probably needs a bit more physical energy, or you're in meetings, that's best for that time when you're being a little bit low after a meal or whatever. So be strategic about when you are doing these tasks and when you are doing your meetings. Try to be more controlled about how you use your calendar. And the final tip that I would give you is when you're looking at your to-do list, before you end the day, go through those long lists of tasks that you have, looking at your calendar and deciding how much time you have to do for the task. Now, when you do this the day before, you're not wasting energy and time in the morning trying to decide what to do. Make the decision the day before. So before you finish your work for the day, give yourself 10-15 minutes or so and just look at that task list and say, right, what are the critical things that need to be done tomorrow? the chances are you're probably only going to be able to get, if you've got a day full of meetings, you probably only get 3 or 4 tasks done. So it's better to make the decision the day before so that when you start the next day, you're very, very clear about what needs to be done. Now, if you're lucky and a couple of those meetings cancel, you can go back to your to-do list and start looking for other tasks that you can do. But always start the day with a clear idea about what you need to get done that day from your task list. Now, you don't need to put that on your calendar. You just need to block that time out, say task time, focus work time, whatever you want to call it. The broader you keep those focus blocks, the more flexibility you have for dealing with other things if an emergency should happen. Life is not perfect. We're not going to be able to perfectly curate to-do lists and task managers and calendars so that they all fit perfectly together. But having some idea that this is using your calendar to structure your day does give you that sense of purpose. You know what you need to be doing, when you need to be doing it. And if you don't do it, well, that was on you. It was your choice and that's fine. But don't make your to-do list the primary source of your time management and productivity, because that's why you feel so overwhelmed. We always seem to have endless lists of things to do in our to-do list, and yet our calendar clearly shows us the constraints, and then we can make better decisions about what to work on and when to work on it. Now, just before we finish, I should say that last week I did a full rundown of how I run my Todoist, how I use my Todoist, and if you want to learn more about that, this video up here is definitely the one to watch next.